Hello. Thank you for joining us for the 10th annual Seattle Asian American Film Festival. My name is SuYoung Yun. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm your moderator for the Haru Haru Q&A that you're tuning in for today. I would love it if we could start by having folks introduce themselves and their film. We can start with Sarah.
Thank you so much for having us. My name is Sarah Park, and I am a New York-based filmmaker, storyteller, and my film is called A Portrait of Us, which is a story about my grandparents and their lives.
Wonderful, thank you. Woody?
Hi, everyone. So thankful to be here. My name is Uri. I use any pronouns. I am calling from unceded East Band Cherokee and Shawnee lands, also known as Kentucky. And my film is called State of Being, and it's a meditation and retelling of growing up in Kentucky as a Korean American woman.
Candace?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here. It's great to meet you. I use she, her pronouns, and I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And my short, When Making Sujebi, is a short about food and its relationships to family and just being an immigrant.
Wonderful. I just have to say I loved all your films so much, and I wanted to thank you for sharing your gifts with the world. So to start us off, one theme that I had noticed when watching all the shorts was how Korean English bilingualism shapes these films. How does your understanding of language influence your filmmaking? Maybe we can popcorn style it? Or whoever wants to speak, just go ahead.
I can start. I think with my film, and I did have the pleasure of watching everyone else's films, and I think this is such a great question. So thank you so much, SuYoung. For me, I grew up speaking Korean, but I'm still kind of at a basic conversational level now. As an adult, I would consider myself like loosely conversationally fluent now. But in my film, it's just sung Korean the entire time. And that was a choice. There was English voiceover in English at some point. But I wanted to create a world where it was just Korean, because this was kind of imagining what Kentucky would be like in like my head almost, where I only hear my mother tongue. So especially with this song, but I think we'll definitely get to that later.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
Can I popcorn it to Sarah?
Yes, thank you. So great question. I can definitely relate to what Uri said. I also grew up speaking mostly English, but hearing enough Korean to be able to speak like a basic level with my family. I think I still am at that level where I can't hold complex conversation in Korean. And for context to my film, my grandparents and I are pretty close, and I grew up really close with them. But sometime in like 2020, I realized that because of this language barrier, because I was very hesitant to speak Korean whenever around them, because I was insecure about my skill level. I actually didn't know that much about them, even though our relationship was close, it didn't involve a lot of speaking or like telling each other stories. And so I didn't know a lot about them in terms of like where they came from, what their immigration entailed. And I was really curious. And at that point that I realized that, I was thankfully improved enough in my Korean where I could actually like muster up the courage to like create a project like this and approach them with it. And so A Portrait of Us was born through this goal, like personal goal of mine to want to speak to them in their own language and to listen to them in their language. And it really helped bridge that gap between us.
I love that. It's incredible to hear about how much work went into making that film in your life, not even just with the movie itself. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Candace?
Yeah, I can totally relate to both Sarah and Uri about the way that bilingualism plays in both the films that we've made and just in our lives. Korean was actually my first language. And so sometimes, even today, I still think in Korean, which is very funny, but I haven't written in Korean for a very long time. And so when I was making Sujabi, that was actually the first time that I had written a lot of my Korean thoughts in writing. And I sort of, thought that the action of writing and transcribing my Korean thoughts was so interesting because, I had written in English all my life, done a lot of reading in English all my life. And so I just thought that play on, thinking and writing and speaking this language was sort of interesting to subtly explore in the film.
Love that. Love that. This is the juicy conversation with these questions. Love it. So I want to talk about another theme that I felt when I watched movies, and that was a sense of nostalgia, especially as a diasporic Korean American longing for a home myself, for family, and for belonging. In every sense of the word, with all the layers and all the meanings that you could attach to that. Can you speak on how art can be a way to address, reconcile, or heal diasporic connection from one's motherland? I'd love for whoever just to answer. Go ahead.
I'll start since I went last time. So I immigrated here to the States when I was young, but from the moment that my parents and I came here, they sort of, it's not that they wanted to like erase my Korean identity. They sort of, wanted me to assimilate, right? I don't know how, and that's probably just my experience. I don't know how it's like for anybody else, but, I didn't really watch Korean media growing up. I didn't listen to Korean music. I wasn't necessarily encouraged to. And it wasn't until I was in my like mid and late 20s that I started doing so. And I think by, watching a lot of these Asian American films, music, and, engaging in that kind of art really sort of helped me, both connect to the place that I was born, but also sort of like grapple with the fact that, I might not necessarily, connect fully with what my homeland is, right? And so I think I don't know that art can necessarily do everything that I want it to do, but I think it really helped me sort of question and see and ask about those connections.
Oh,
sorry.
Love that. Love that. Art as a tool to even just start to look at it. Thank you.
resonate with that a lot, Candace. Thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna like look at the time here because this question is like so much of the thesis question of my film, whatever that phrase means. But on the nostalgia level, I grew up in this place, and in making this film, and in like everywhere from producing it to actually being in it, was revisiting the footage didn't make it in there, but like my high school, like these places I'd gone to 100 times for so many years, in such like important years of my life, namely like my adolescence and my childhood, also places that I actually hadn't like navigated that much, but such an interesting way to then like find new places of what I call my home through literally a new lens. Like people like use, like one of the farms is a family friend's farm. One of them is like friends of friends in high school, and their families were kind enough to let us film there. And it was actually, it's fun to reconnect. And on the level of kind of what Candace said, like in terms of healing, it was so much for me. And I can only hope that it reaches other people. But it feels selfish to say, honestly, but it's like one of the things I know how to do. And it was wonderful to make, you know, kind of a little crew out of it. And it was very special in that way. But yeah, I'll just stop there. I could go on, but I'll tire of it.
Amazing. I'm hearing that there was healing in the collaborative effort of the making of the movie, and people don't see that. They only see the finished product, and that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, that was so beautiful. And I think filmmaking is just very magical like that. And I can definitely relate to what both of you said, Udi and Candace. And as for myself, I grew up in New Jersey, and my grandparents were the ones who immigrated. And then my mom, for example, moved here when she was 11. So there's a significant distance there between me and my Korean roots. And although I did grow up fairly well connected to the Korean culture through my parents and my grandparents, I would say that there's still noticeable distance, and I was never really immersed in the culture, and didn't really grow up knowing about the history. And so pursuing this film was really interesting and difficult, and it was a really big learning experience for me. But I think approaching my grandparents with a documentary, with like a film and a project, I think was really helpful, as like it was something to kind of bridge that gap that I was mentioning earlier. And it was this, like there lies still a really big language barrier between us, and generational gap and cultural gap. But we could mutually share this platform and explore stories that we hadn't before. And I think that was really new for both of us and really special. And I thought it would be really challenging, but somehow it worked. And through painting this portrait of them through my eyes, I not only was I able to learn more about them and also like Korean history in general, I think they were also able to learn a lot about how much they've grown and how much distance they've grown through immigration, through becoming parents, through becoming grandparents, throughout the past many years. And I think having that be a learning experience for all of us was really special.
Oh, I have to say, listening to your harmony did things to the soul, the marrow in my soul. Like having her narrate. I mean, you just don't hear, harmonies
It's
narrating.
true.
And
Yeah,
it's really powerful, powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
I appreciate it.
I wanted to shift a little bit to the music and the auditory world. And I wanted to me, music is a fundamental part of being Korean. Lullabies, the Toki song sung by my 엄마, pansori music and shamanic singing. I mean, the prevalence of modern Korean music and K-pop. What is your personal connection to music and Korean-ness? And how were your movies influenced by that?
I'll start again because I basically made a music video. So I really wish the person who made Jackrabbit or Santoki was here, because that song hit. I think my mom like every week loves to tell me like, oh my god, you used to love that song, like you wanted it, like you played it on repeat, you told me like sing it all the time, like tashi tashi. And yeah, and also in their film they used this beautiful violin version of Ariran, which I really appreciated, so shout out. And in my piece, it's also a version of Arirang called Chongson Arirang, sung by Song So-hee, who's like a modern sensation right now. And it's like a modern take on this very anthemic, almost mythical Korean song. And if anyone has any further information on Chongson Arirang, I'm always like listening, because Chongson is where the song originated, and it's like these mountainous areas. And in my imagination, it's like this beautiful place. And it was the perfect way, conjoining like past and present in the song, and also like what the movie is trying to do. So it was a really privilege to work with that.
Wow, it sounds like almost synesthesia at that point. Like you're combining so many different. Oh yes, love it. Can I ask the question again? What is your personal connection to music and Korean-ness? And how are your movies influenced by that? Well, we can even expand it to just sounds too. Like what kind of sonic sounds were you using for the movies?
So I had no music in my film. So I cannot comment on the musicality of my piece, but I think I really wanted viewers to be sort of immersed in that world of the food and the kitchen. Basically, for anyone who hasn't watched it, I just make sujebi, and they're these very disorienting close-up shots of my hands making sujebi. And I think sort of, there are moments where, or at least I thought the audience would sort of feel a little disoriented and sort of get lost and just in the process. And I didn't think that adding music would help, but I really do wish that in the future I would love to listen to more historic Korean music, current Korean music, just because I think I don't listen to a lot of Korean music, but I think songwriters do such a beautiful job of storytelling, and they have to tell it in such like short, they have such a limited space to do so. And I think that I could personally learn a lot from that. Yeah, that has nothing to do with my film, but I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Candace. Mm.
Personally, music is a huge like love of mine, and I am really affected emotionally by music. Um, and so for this film, in preparing to work with a composer and brainstorming what kind of music I wanted, I knew it had to be very specific, and I wanted it to just be enough to be complementary to my grandparents' voices so that it could move the audience, because that's how I like to take in music, and that's how I like to take in um, music from movies. And yeah, I knew I wanted it to be like very simple, just piano if possible, and almost sound as if it was telling the story alongside my grandparents' voices, not really overshadowing them, but like filling in the gaps between their sentences.
Beautiful, beautiful. As we get towards the end, I would love to maybe hear the director's final kind of thoughts or comments they would like to share. The question can be, what was your most memorable part of making the film? And then if there's any future things that we could think about and ways that we can support you.
I can start this time. Um, so to refresh my memory, the question was what was most memorable about the filmmaking process? And okay, I think what was most memorable in this process for me was in the beginning when I was approaching my grandparents with this project. I actually thought they wouldn't say yes, and I just went into it expecting them to be like really shy and not willing to share publicly their stories. But and at first they were met with surprise that I was asking them to share because they thought they didn't have much to offer. But then they said yes, and then like on the filming day, they were so excited to be on camera and like to be recorded. I think it was their first time being hooked up to like mics and stuff, and they had come so prepared with so many stories, almost as if they were waiting for like this platform or for someone to ask them to share. And I thought that was so interesting because I didn't expect it. Throughout most of my life, I didn't see them like itching to share these stories, and suddenly they were like spilling so much to me because of this documentary. And I think that realization was so memorable to me, because it made me think like all I have to do is ask, and all I have to do is try and speak in their language. And um, yeah, and I think realizing that has since changed the way I approach them and interact with them, even outside of the film, which was very heartwarming to me. And yeah, I would say that that was the most memorable. And in terms of future work, I'm actually currently working on another Korean American story. My friend Eleanor Cho is directing a film for a Dolby and Ghetto Film School finish the script competition, and it's called Dinner is Ready, and it hits all the same notes about like familial love and cooking and food, and it's just a really special story, very personal to her. And I've gotten the privilege to be an editor on her team, so definitely be on the lookout for that. And yeah, for any future updates, you can find me at Lala Spark on Instagram.
Heard it here first. Love that. Oh, thank you for sharing those gems, Sarah. Mm.
I'm so excited to watch that film, Sarah. I just want to make like a quick like food note. Like I Candace's film obviously like made me hungry. It was so delicious looking. And the movie that you cited, Little Forest, I just watched that. So it's amazing that that's like part of your film. Yeah, I resonate a lot with what Sarah just said about what happens even outside of the film. It's like the film is just kind of the beginning, and what I had mentioned before about the collaborative like community around the film and reconnecting. Also, like my family. My next film is about my parents on a farm. That's it. There's a lot of chickens forthcoming, and yeah, even now, being able to share this film with others and share this space with all of you brilliant, beautiful minds, and to have watched your films, like they really did touch me and move me, because I really, yeah, I really related to them. I wonder why. So yeah, I guess you can follow me on on Instagram at Octomedusa, OCTOMEDUSA. But thank you so much for having me.
Melody.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what both Sarah and Uri said. It's like such an honor to be here, because when I was watching everybody's films, I resonated with the films resonated with me, they touched me, they moved me. And I have to say, I'm not a filmmaker. This was the first, or when making Sujebi was the first time I'd learned to use Premiere to edit. So that was kind of interesting, but I didn't really think much of it. But when I learned to edit footage on the computer during quarantine, during the pandemic, and then I showed this to some of my friends and people I hadn't really talked to in a while, it sort of helped me, reconnect with the people that I had sort of lost touch with. And I think that sort of goes back to the community-based, the way that, both Sarah and Uri talked about how film making sort of connects people. It connects you to, people who you already love, to people you don't know or you don't know yet. And so I think I found that part to be the most interesting aspect about this whole experience. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, my handle is pretty simple. It's Kane Candace.
Well, you better keep making, because it was wonderful. Y'all did such an amazing job and just served us gifts with the movie magic. Thank you so much to all the filmmakers for joining us, the ones who made the movies. Thank you to the audience for watching. Please check out the other great programs playing at SAAFF right now, available virtually from March 3rd to the 13th. You can visit bit.ly/SAAFF 2022.